Well, hello, my name is Zach, and this is my sit down. Well, technically it's more of a stand-up, but I wanted to take a moment to share a bit of my story with you today. So I actually was born in Romania, and I was adopted at the age of 2 by my parents, Laura Lynn and Paul Gazdick. I grew up in Canada, and I had a good Christian home, a family that loved me very much, and I grew up going to church and being a part of church life. Now, the reality was, at a fairly young age, I chose to follow Jesus more so out of a fear of what could happen if I didn't. I wrestled with this tension of fearing God more than actually loving God. That was kind of the reality. But I loved Him, I followed Him, I read my Bible, I worshiped, I praised God, but I always wrestled with this tension. And so, until 2010, our family went on what my dad calls a root trip, going to the roots of where our family comes from. And while we were there, we were in Romania, and we went to the orphanage that I came from. I remember going there and being like, oh, it's an orphanage, man, nothing really stands out, nothing really resonating. It'd be like if you went to your hospital room, you'd be like, it's a hospital room. But that night, while we were in the bed and breakfast, while I was sleeping at like 3 in the morning, I woke up and I just had this craving for Pringles. And the reality is I could get lost in a box. I'm directionally not gifted whatsoever. I'm also terrified of the dark. And yet this hunger in me it superseded that. And so I actually remember getting up out of my bed, putting clothes on, and I decided, I'm just gonna walk straight. I'm just gonna go to the first convenience store and buy some Pringles. And so as I'm walking, I finally get to the shop and I pay for my Pringles, a small green onion, sour cream and onion packet of Pringles. And as I'm walking back, I all of a sudden hear this crash, this bang, this boom, and these kids that I'd seen earlier coming around the corner. Now, these kids were kids who I had recognized from the orphanage, hanging around there. But this time they had bottles of hard alcohol and like cigarettes. And just in that moment, I was afraid. I started running really fast and finally got back to my hotel room. It wasn't until I was on my flight back that I started processing and realizing, man, had I not been adopted, that probably would have been me. But more importantly than that, when I look at Ephesians, it talks about how we are adopted and made as co-heirs with Christ. That God decided that before we were formed, before creation, that we would be a part of that. And for me, that was a moment of, wow, like, okay, my family is not perfect, it's a good family, but more than that, God has adopted us into His family. And for me, that was this tipping point from fearing God to actually loving God, and drastically changed. And so that's my sit down and my story with you.